I am so glad that they recommended it to me. Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today. And for this video, we are going to be doing my March wrap up. All right, before we get to anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments how many books did you read in March. Alrighty, so as per usual, can you believe March is already gone? So wild. Time flies. I actually had a fairly great reading month, except looking back at the books I read, a lot of the books I read this month were for dedicated videos. So check out a few of my vlogs that came out in March. I'll put a link to some of them in the cards if you're interested. I do have a few books to talk about with y'all today in this wrap up that weren't mentioned in any of those videos, but apparently I prioritize mostly video-based books this month. Before we get into any reviews though, let's go ahead and dive into some of my stats. First off, I read 13 books this month, and across those I read 4,304 pages. That's fantastic. That does include converting audiobook hours to pages, but in regard to audiobook hours, I listened to just over 60 hours. That's a lot. My average rating this month was fantastic with 4.04 stars, and I had 2 DNFs, unfortunately. For my genre breakdown, I had 3 fantasy books, followed by 1 graphic novel, 1 horror book, 3 manga, 1 mystery, 1 romance, and 3 sci-fi. Wow, that's ironic. 3, 1, 3, 1, 1, 3. As for the little goals that I keep for myself, unfortunately, I did not read a book bigger than 450 pages. I also did not read a nonfiction book, but I did at least read a few comics/manga. Then for my series stats, I did start into 2 series. I continued 8 though. I finished 1 and I also DNF'd another. It's kind of complicated. So on that note, let's go ahead and talk about the DNF first, just so we can get it out of the way. I attempted to read If Only You by Chloe Liese. This was for a TBR jar in which my friend Kat picked a book for me. This was one she just saw on my list that was fairly high up whenever she opened my Goodreads, probably because I had recently entered into a giveaway for it. This is the 6th book in the Bergman Brothers series, which is a romance book series. So they're all companions. Technically, you can read them as standalones, which is why she thought I would have no issues reading this one. But me being me, I did have a problem. First off, it doesn't matter that they're companion series. I do always prefer reading them in order. But also, once we were introduced to both of the characters, I just felt like there was some basis we probably saw of these characters in previous books. I believe it was the 2nd book, which follows Ren, the sibling that Ziggy, our female main character in this one, is closest with, as well as the best friend of Seb, the male main character, and If Only You. Meaning, I think you get a little bit of an introduction into both of those characters there, and because of their relationships to him, I'm guessing you also get to see a little bit more depth there, a little bit of their dynamics. You would have some investment into the characters already, which unfortunately I didn't have that basis. So I was getting really frustrated with these two super quickly. On top of that, this also is a brother's best friend trope. I'm really picky about the brother's best friend because it tends to get treated in a really weird way of like, they're either way too open about it or way too secretive. So unfortunately, I did end up DNFing this one, but I do have plans to come back to the series and actually start at the beginning. Hopefully, if I do that, it'll go better for me. So I technically DNF'd the series, but like, I'm going to come back to it. A series that I spent a fair amount of this month reading was Soul Eater by Atsushi ohkubo. I read volume 7, volume 8, and volume 9. So this is set in a world where there are people who are known as either weapons or meisters. Weapons literally turn into a weapon, and the meister is somebody who wields said weapon. Specifically, we follow these 3 different teams who attend the school called Death Weapon Meister Academy. Long story short, the end goal is for the weapon to become a scythe for the Shinigami Lord Death himself. And we're seeing these 3 teenage teams who are trying to accomplish that, but at the same time end up in the middle of this really big plot in which a really terrible big bad that the Shinigami banished years ago is on his way back. If you're new here, Soul Eater is my favorite anime, and I've been wanting to get around to reading the manga for some time because it does have some changes, so I'm finally doing that. And obviously I did make a good dent into the series this month. Starting at the top with volume 7, I really like this one because it's an introduction to some new faces, both good and bad. We get to see some of the death weapons that are currently working in the universe, and also some new villain characters that are definitely going to be causing problems as the story progresses. One way or another, I really like this one, and it made me very excited to continue reading. Came out to 4.5 stars. Then in volume 8, we do get to see more new characters here as well, specifically different students at the DWMA that aren't our main 3. Top of some more exploration of the villains and seeing their perspective, their plans, like how they're laying everything out. Really creepy imagery, especially around kids in this one. There's also some good character development for Blackstar, one of the main 3 students we follow, who is actually my least favorite, but we're finally seeing a little bit of maturity from him here. But on the whole, this one like doesn't flow together super great, so I went with 4 stars on this volume. Honestly, same thoughts with volume 9. We get a little bit more about different students, we get more about the villain characters, but there are a few filler issues in this one. However, I do love Unhinged Stein. He is one of the head meisters for Lord Shinigami. I love him, especially when he's losing it. So this one also came out to 4 stars. I did actually get the opportunity to continue a fantasy series with The Girl in the Tower by Katherine Arden. This is the next in the Winter Night trilogy. But this is set in 12th century Russia and actually has Russian folklore woven throughout the story. We are following this main character of 𝗖cie, a girl who can actually see these mythical beings, and unfortunately it has made her life very difficult. This does continue on where the first book ends, and it does have a slow start, but it also has a very intriguing ending. I actually really like what Arden did with this one because the first part of the book is actually through the eyes of 𝗖cie's older siblings who have been living in Russia, so they haven't experienced most of the events of the first book. Then in part 2, we flip back to 𝗖cie's perspective and sort of see the events that have been taking place at this time through her eyes. However, I was a little shocked that we only really alternated between those 3 characters. I guess not only, but we alternated between those 3 the most in comparison to the previous book where we really bounced around a lot. And with that, we actually saw through the villain's perspective in the first book, which I did actually miss here. How 𝗖cie's character acts in this book is very reminiscent to Mulan. Unfortunately, that did allow for some very heartbreaking moments, but the emotion in those scenes was incredibly well done at the same time. It's impressive that Arden manages to make the story feel so true to the setting, while at the same time leaning on like some more optimistic, fantastical elements of it. And going off of that, I applaud Arden for how she weaves in history to the fantastical storyline. The setting in this series is just incredibly transportive. It's really atmospheric. The world definitely feels like fairy tales, but with a lot higher stakes. There's also a lot more action in this one, which was really fun, definitely had me very dragged into the story, and also pulled to the edge of my seat many a times. I also loved the twist that took place here with the villain and the tie-ins to Russian folklore again. That was really smart. That said, like I mentioned, we don't see through the villain's perspective in this one, and I wanted more from him. I was also frustrated that issues kept arising simply because of miscommunication. Well, not miscommunication, but lack of communication. There was also a certain character from the first book that was included in here that I honestly don't think was really necessary, and I'm not just saying that because I didn't like them. Oh, and then there's a romance that's popping up that I could really enjoy, but I need more from it. I don't feel like we've spent enough time with those 2 characters together for me to really be invested. So I'm definitely going to continue reading the series, but like there's a few qualms I have with it. Thus far, it's not like a 5-star series, but it's definitely really enjoyable. I'm invested to see how things end. This was a solid 4-star. Last one for the series that I continued, I finally managed to pick up volume 6 of Fence by 𝗖cie pacat and illustrated by Joanna the Mad. This is set at a 3rd-rate fencing school where we are mostly following our main character Nicholas, who is the illegitimate son of this Olympic fencer and is determined to become the best of the best in spite of his father. However, he's actually not that great. He's really good for having just started out, but he's not nearly where he needs to be. Also has this ongoing competition / slow burn romance with his roommate 𝗖cie, who is currently at number 2 and shockingly attending the school, plus has some sort of a relationship with Nicholas's half-brother Jesse. This one continues on where the boys are at a fencing camp and you get to see some of the other schools competing, but I learned more about fencing, which is something I always really enjoy with this series because it's entertaining, but it is also very informative about a sport that I personally don't know much of. On top of that though, I loved seeing the team work together as a group, trying to improve, seeing how their dynamics are shifting as they get to know each other and work together more. But guys, as far as the romance goes, there's a appointment that these 2 have, and it is so freaking cute. It is the cutest thing. There is this fantastic panel that really shows just how opposites attract they are, and I love it. Like, swoon. So stinking cute. These are so easy and just really fun and adorable. So 4.5 stars. Can't wait for the next one, which I have no clue when it will be coming out, but I want a date now, please. Final book we're going to be talking about is actually a surprise one that I picked up and ended up starting me into a series that I just know I'm gonna love. The Wolf at the Door by 𝗖cie adhara. This was recommended to me by my friend Destiny because I loved the Green Creek series. I am so glad that they recommended it to me. I was sucked in so fast. I ended up blasting through this book in about a day. So this story is following ex-FBI agent Cooper Dayton, who now works for the BSI, an offshoot which specializes in supernatural investigations, namely werewolf crimes. Unfortunately for him, he ends up being partnered with a werewolf from the Trust, which is kind of like the government body of werewolves, Oliver Park. And these two aren't really sure of each other. They don't really trust each other when things begin, but they are then sent to investigate this series of murders in a very small town in Maine. And between trying to catch a serial killer, handling all of this like wolf-human politics, there's a romance that's developing between these two, and I loved it. First off, wow, Cooper is insanely well written. He has got so much depth, as well as a lot of issues, but I was really impressed that every single one of those felt really well incorporated into his character, into why he acts the way he acts, into why he responds a certain way, why he talks a certain way, how he thinks. I think every little piece of him that was revealed made absolutely perfect sense for the character that was presented. I also really like seeing the little bits revealed of his personality outside of his identity as a cop. And God, I absolutely loved every interaction between him and Oliver. Initially, I was actually a little concerned about how Oliver was going to come across as a character because we only see through Cooper's perspective. But by the end of the book, I didn't need to worry. I think the author managed to build him out just as well in a very similar way, where it's just little things here and there that are showcased in his actions, in pieces of his background that are revealed, in how he responds. Once again, all of it worked together really well to broaden this character that was being presented, while also having some stuff unexplained to keep me more intrigued to learn more about him and want to keep reading the series. The development between these two is amazing because not only are they having to improve their relationship as work colleagues, as professional partners, but there's also this sexual tension between them. And you can see the trust that's building and how it also starts to push on those romantic feelings. And you could see the building of it in every single interaction. Even when they're just talking about the case, there's still plenty of banter. There's plenty of snipping at each other. And again, the sexual tension. I was just enamored with these two. I was in for the ride on every single interaction, desperate to see how they were eventually going to collide. And collide they did. This is also steamy. For this being sold as a romance book, the mystery is insanely well done, and I would say feels more like the main plot of the story. I was at the edge of my seat when it came to the climax. I was so desperate to see how our boys were going to figure their way out of the situation. Though I did guess one reveal, pretty much everything else in the mystery I was surprised by, and I also realized after the fact, oh, okay, that connects to this and that connects to this and this is a clue for this, and it all just made perfect sense. Across the board, I just had a lot of fun with this. It was really easy, it was really bingeable. When I downloaded the ebook, I wasn't expecting to get nearly as invested as I did. This was supposed to be the book I had on my phone and would occasionally pick up anytime I had some free time. I'm trying to get better about doom scrolling or, you know, just staring at my phone. Already, I have downloaded the next book in the series. Big old 4.5 stars. I wouldn't say I was like completely obsessed with it, but like pretty dang close. All right, y'all, so that is it for today. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, leave me a wolf emoji in the comments. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below as well. I have all my socials as well as a few ways you can support me linked in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!